That has been one big change in my life that I am thankful for. I was always running out to have another cigarette. And this was in any social situation, or if I even visited a friend at the hospital, I'd run out to the parking lot and have a cigarette. And the cigarette was just interrupting my life and inhibiting closeness with family members.
Hi everyone, this is Nancy Davos and welcome to this episode of Ask an Ex. Every Ask an Ex episode features an inspiring ex-smoker who succeeded with the CBQ method and who shares their personal experience and unique perspective on quitting smoking. The ex I have with me today joined our CBQ program and quit smoking on the 6th of March 2020, and she is here to tell you how she did it. Please welcome Jenny Leonowens. Jenny, thank you so much for being here, and huge congratulations on quitting smoking more than 2 years ago.
Yes, it's been an incredible experience these last 2 years as a non-smoker. It took me quite a while to quit smoking, trying a whole pile of methods, hypnotism, patches, therapy with other therapists, not with you. And yes, it just didn't stick. I only was able to quit smoking when I was pregnant and breastfeeding, and then I'd go back to smoking again. So I'm afraid I wasn't too good an example for my children in that sense. But this time, it's worked.
I didn't know you tried all these different ways to quit smoking before. Can you tell me a bit more about what you tried and what you think was different this time?
Well, cold turkey doesn't work. When you quit cold turkey, which I had done, was, you haven't dealt with the issues around smoking and the motives of why a person smokes.
Yes.
And so then I also tried going off slowly. And it was always that desire to go back and be able to smoke. And I hadn't dealt with the issues around why I was smoking. And then I went to a hypnotist, and I tried 2 hypnotists, one here in Guatemala and one in San Luis Obispo, and neither of them worked. The Guatemalan one was, I got furious because when I drove away from his clinic, I suddenly remembered that he told me that I had to gain weight. What? And that had been one of my major fears around quitting smoking. So I turned my car around and I stomped into his clinic and I told him what I thought of him. And I didn't go back.
Wow.
And then I also tried vaping.
Okay.
Thinking that was going to help me to quit smoking. But all I would do was vap more. And then the reports started coming in as to the effects of vaping in the lungs and, creating these horrible illness and of the lung system. And so I put away my vapor and I said, okay, I'd rather smoke than vap. And then I started researching on internet, looking for actually a therapy that would help me quit smoking, because I realized at that point that I needed therapy. Oh, I tried that other system that you're kind of like enclosed in a room with a therapist, and I don't remember the name of that system. But anyway, by the end of the day, you're supposed to not want to smoke anymore, and you have to deliver your cigarettes in a container, blah, blah. That didn't work. But I'm a clinical psychologist, and I realized that this has to be dealt with through psychology.
Yes.
So then I started researching the web. I found your YouTube's presentations on quitting smoking. So I saw quite a few of those. I liked your orientation. I liked the fact that you were eclectic in your therapies and that you pulled in from different um, 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 streams of therapy, and you put in the different techniques as to help the people to quit smoking. I thought, well, this sounds like it can work. And that's when I signed up.
I didn't know you were a clinical psychologist. And
well, yes.
It means so much that the method resonated with you, even more so that you have all this experience and this education and background that's very relevant to the method. So
whenever you mentioned, that this technique was from neuro-linguistic programming or from, whatever you were mentioning, it just made total sense to me. Mm-hmm. I no longer practice clinical psychology because I had to retire and help my father manage a coffee farm, coffee and cattle. So I was a farm manager for quite a few years until the family would decided to sell the farm after my dad and mom passed away. But anyway, what you learn in psychology, you never forget. Mm-hmm. And so it just made so much sense what you were, the strategies you were employing, the homework you were giving us that we had to do, the writing down on daily basis, on a minute-to-minute basis, how many cigarettes we were smoking, what we felt before, what we felt afterwards, where we were. All of that just made so much sense.
Yeah.
And I do remember that I had a bit of difficulty visualizing, and you helped me with that.
What helped you? If you can share for others, because it's not uncommon.
Well, yes. What I couldn't visualize myself within myself. Mm-hmm. And I know that some people, when they visualize, they project it out towards, in front of them, and others have the screen, you could say, inside and can see themselves there. But I couldn't. I tried one and the other, and I couldn't do it. I could see myself from behind, which obviously, being a psychologist, I knew that I was distancing myself from myself, and it was a bit of resistance there to visualize myself as a non-smoker. I was having difficulty with that. But then when I wrote your team and you answered, or one of members of your team answered, you said, well, go for the emotion. You don't have to see yourself. Go for what you're feeling. So then that worked. So I'd close my eyes and I'd concentrate how I was feeling, perceiving myself or projecting myself as a non-smoker. So I went more with the feeling of it than the visual aspect. Mm. And then what I incorporated there was a bit of auditive, what am I going to say to myself?
Yes, very powerful.
And then that worked for me. Mm-hmm. And I've seen other people on the Facebook site mentioning that they have difficulty with visualization.
Yeah. But what you said, that's the key, because it's not about necessarily seeing, it's about imagining in any way
yes,
you can. So yeah, that's a great one. Thanks for sharing.
Yes.
And so this method makes sense. So you tried so many things. I mean, well done for your perseverance on trying and keeping at it. This is phenomenal all by itself. So what do you think about this method and this program was different or resonated with you and allowed you to, step away and quit smoking for good?
Well, I think that coming closer and closer to the moment when you abandon and leave the cigarettes to one side, knowing that every day I'm going to get online. I was very disciplined. I got online at the same time. I would read, I would take notes because I'm kinetic and I need to move my hand along with what I'm learning. So I take notes of what you were saying, although with the PDFs that you would include in the video, everything was there. But I would take notes alongside on the PDF,
Amazing.
And then before I would start the course of the next morning, I would take half an hour to read through what I had done previously, to read through the answers I had given to the questions that were posed for the previous day. Yeah. So it's to get into the mood again and into the framework. And then you would take us one step further to that goal. So I like the staging of it. Mm-hmm. And every day getting closer and closer. And there were wow moments each day. And I would concentrate on those insights of myself and why I was smoking or what it represented to me. Mm-hmm. And that helped a lot as well, keeping that very present before I'd start the next day video. So it was taking up at least 2 or more hours of doing my homework, of rereading what I did yesterday, and of seeing the videos for the present day. So I was dedicating a lot of time and effort to just immerse myself within your program. And that is what I think is the success of the program, at least in my case, was that full immersion and being, giving myself up into the process, knowing that the process was going to work and committing to it from the beginning. Now, the first time I tried it was in October of the previous year.
Okay. So,
and I got as far as day 5 or something. And then I don't remember what happened, but it didn't click for me. And then I said, no, I've got to go back. And that's when I started again at the end of February to finish in the 6th of March. It took me more than 10 days because sometimes I decided to repeat the previous video because I felt that I wasn't ready to go on to the next one. So it took me around 12 or 13 days in total. But what I feel was super, super important from my side is committing. Without commitment, which I hadn't done the previous October, I hadn't reached that point of committing myself to your program. And that is very important.
You just described the perfect recipe of succeeding with the program so you started the program, but you were not as committed to the process or trusting the process right. for whatever reason. But then you came back to it and you did everything perfectly. You gave yourself the time you needed to go through the days. You reviewed the previous day. You took notes. So you totally immersed yourself, which is so important because it becomes your reality. And then it's not like, oh, I think by the way I'm doing today, it's my goal. It shows you that this is the most important thing in my life right now. And of course, this matters a lot. So commitment is very important. And thank you for sharing how you approached the process and the program. What do you think helped you commit in March? What changed? And what made you go back and what changed the next time?
Well, it was, I knew that from ages ago, I think that all of us smokers are aware that smoking is bad for your health.
Yeah.
And I have grandchildren who were asking me why I was smoking, knowing that it was bad for me, why I was smoking, and asking me to explain why I couldn't quit.
Wow, these are tough questions.
Yes.
Right?
It was. So And I wanted to increase my health in many ways. That was food and exercise, be able to breathe better. I had a smoker's cough. I had back nasal drip. And I knew all of this was probably related to smoking. And that if I quit, I was going to be able to get rid of those other issues that were bothering me and my health. So I guess it was just everything tied in together at a given moment. And I said, okay, it's time. Another factor that I think helps is that when you pay, you need results. If things come free, you don't appreciate them because you aren't putting in the effort.
That is true.
And in this case, it was not only the mental and emotional effort that I was investing in the program, but it was financial. And that always, I think that with a lot of people, that helps to financially commit to whatever they want to do. Otherwise, therapy, if it's free, it doesn't work.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point.
Yes.
When we pay attention. And
that's a good one.
Yeah.
Yes.
And, I know it from myself. I think that anyone can relate to that. We appreciate more and commit more to things we have paid for. So yeah.
Yes, we have invested in. If it's an emotional or a physical investment or financial investment, and in this case, it was everything. Yeah, we just tied everything together.
Yeah, the whole being.
Yes.
Time investment, emotional investment, financial. Yes. Everything.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so, how long were you smoking? How did you start smoking, if you remember? Can you take me back?
Yeah, I started smoking when I was about 17 or 16 years old, sitting on the trampoline of the swimming pool on the farm and hoping that my parents wouldn't see me from the house. And it was social. A friend introduced me to 2 or 3 friends, and let's try to smoke. Let's see how it goes. Of course, we all got horribly busy, coughed like crazy, but we really had to work at it to become addicted. I mean, it was not an easy process. And then this was over 40 years ago. And then, you go to parties and everybody's smoking, and it's so cool to be a smoker. And I even got a what would you call it? A filter that didn't have a filter in it, of course. And it was very elegant. It was ivory, and oh my gosh. And everybody told me I looked so elegant smoking. So I really believed it in myself.
Oh my gosh.
It just went from there on.
Yeah.
Social, you want to belong socially.
Of course.
Fortunately, these days it's not well looked at. So it's not pushed at teenage years as it was back then when I was a teenager. At least I hope it is not. And that I was very much into sports, and I was athletic, but there I was smoking away. Of course, back then I didn't smoke as many cigarettes, but slowly it started increasing, and I went from a pack, I went to 2 packs for a while. And then I cut back to 1 pack. And whenever I'd get anxious, I thought, I'd start smoking more. Of course, that made me more anxious. So I'd smoke more. It's like.
Yeah.
Yes.
A loop that we get stuck on. Yeah.
And then when I married and I wanted to get pregnant, I said, okay, I got to quit. I'm going to have a baby. So I'd quit for the pregnancy, and I'd quit for the 1.5 years that I breastfed. And then when my child would stop breastfeeding, I'd say, okay, now I can start smoking again.
Yeah. I remember once you commented on, I think you commented, or it was in an email, and you said you were reflecting, it was in your 1-year anniversary, and you were reflecting back on the year that passed, And you said that I've come a long way from the person I used to be, that used
Yes.
to, at every opportunity, have a cigarette, even if it meant sacrificing moments.
Relationships. Yes, that has been one big change in my life that I am thankful for. I was always running out to have another cigarette. And this was in any social situation, or if I even visited a friend at the hospital, I'd run out to the parking lot and have a cigarette. And the cigarette was just interrupting my life and inhibiting closeness with family members. Of course, I had a group of friends, and most of them were smoking. Now only 2 of them are left smoking. But with my children, with my grandchildren, I better say, I'd say, okay, I'll be right back. I'm going to go out and have a cigarette. And they'd stand at the window and watch me while I had my cigarette. And have you finished smoking yet? Have you finished smoking yet? Uh-oh. And I would have such a guilt conscious going on there, and feel so miserable about it. But at the same time, I wanted that cigarette, and the cigarette dominated my life. I was subjected to the vice of smoking. And even my daughter would say, "Mom, go out and have your cigarette. I can see you're getting jittery. You want to go and smoke." And it was absolutely true. And now I can, now I don't even think of going out to smoke, or, of cutting a conversation short or whatever. Cravings don't happen anymore. Every now and then, when I see somebody smoking, I think, if only they knew that there is the possibility to quit smoking.
That's what you think about when you see someone smoking.
I feel sorry for them, and hope that one day they can discover how to quit. But yes, it really cut into my life. It was really destroying relationships for me. And I felt very comfortable with my son because we'd both sit and smoke together.
Yeah.
But not with my daughter and my grandchildren. Of course, all of this was during COVID time, so I wasn't too much in contact with friends. But once you start coming out of COVID and meeting up again and everything, not to be smoking is a real blessing.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. It gives you so much freedom.
Yes, and so much extra time.
Yeah.
That's one thing that also I had to discover how to fill that extra time.
And how did you do
that? One of the exercises, when you have to write out, where do you smoke?
Yeah.
Well, I was always smoking outside on the porch, and I have a beautiful garden that I made during COVID, even with a bit of a pond there and a couple of frogs and a lot of plants. And so then I would fill my time gardening. Mm-hmm. And I'd get out there with my big old floppy hat and my gloves, and I would prune and I would plant and I would, do whatever I had to do and keep myself physically occupied. Because that habit of taking a cigarette to your mouth and all of that involvement, even from the moment you light up your cigarette, it becomes a ritual.
Yes.
So it's very important to break that ritual.
Yeah.
And so I was chewing gum. Now I don't need to chew gum anymore. I don't need to have anything in my mouth as I had it previously. But gardening helped me a lot, and reading.
There's a great, healthy ways to keep your...
To substitute those moments and then make those moments of gardening grow longer and longer, because previously I'd stop to have a cigarette. I'd have to pull off my glove. But then I didn't have to do that anymore. So gardening for me worked.
Great. And And at the beginning, how did you experience the withdrawal? And when you did have cravings, if you did, what helped you cope with those cravings?
Well, one of your strategies that you taught us was to do something with your hands.
Mm-hmm.
Even if people thought you're looking funny or whatever, do something with your hands. So there I was at stoplights, flicking my fingers like crazy. and that helped a lot. So I would be flicking my hands all over the place and laughing at myself, which also helped.
Yes.
Interrupt the craving, because you can't think of cravings while you're flicking your fingers and laughing at yourself. And you notice that people are looking at you from the neighboring car, so I just smile at them and flick my fingers. Yes, that strategy helped me a lot.
Yeah. Interrupted this craving thought immediately.
Yes. And also, every day I was going out walking in the morning, and if I found that I had a strong craving, I would put on my tennis shoes and go out and walk for 15 minutes and walk through that craving.
Great strategy.
I mean, walking for health just doesn't make sense to have a cigarette in your hand at the same time.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing those great strategies. These are fantastic. And Jenny, this is like my favorite question to ask. What did quitting smoking teach you?
Oh, it really empowered me.
Mm-hmm.
That's, I think, one of the main issues here is how I feel so much more empowered. I don't feel in control of anything or anyone. I just feel like I am myself without a cigarette or some other issue controlling my living, and also that how to deal with situations, because previously anything that happened, whether I was happy, sad, anxious, angry, it only had one response: the cigarette.
Yeah.
And now all of these emotions have a variety of responses that are in accord to the emotion. It's not the one cigarette that's going to resolve all of my emotions as a response. If I'm happy, I smile, I laugh. If I'm angry, I stop or whatever needs to be done. If I'm sad, I go through it. I live through the sadness. I don't cover it up with a cigarette. If I need to say something, I speak about it. I don't put a cigarette in my mouth and shut, and it closes off my verbal aspect. So that's another tremendous teaching.
What you said is gold. So because a big fear for many people, and I've experienced it, and probably you have to, is that we fear that we're going to quit smoking and we're going to turn into someone else, someone irritable, someone who's not fun. And your experience was the total opposite. You became your true, authentic self.
Yes.
Which is really amazing and
yes,
really the truth. And also the other thing you said, instead of going to the one and only response for anything that happened, which cannot really help anyway, smoking cannot solve our problems in any way. Every emotion has the appropriate response, and you allow yourself to feel those emotions and you respond appropriately. This is so important for everyone to hear, because it can be liberating to let this cigarette friend go.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's absolutely true.
Yeah. And Jenny, last question: what you shared so many golden nuggets, but what advice would you have for someone who is feeling unmotivated? They want to quit smoking, but they're unmotivated, or they're struggling.
I would suggest, if they've already started the course, I would suggest they backtrack 1 or 2 videos back, and then continue forward with the videos. And don't worry about extending the number of days that you take the course. If you're feeling unmotivated, is that something hasn't clicked yet in the videos that they have watched. So they need to go back to a video that made sense and then carry it forward from there. Committing to telling someone that you are quitting smoking is also important. And if they can get support from that person, asking them, how is it going? How are you feeling today? Are you still on course? I think that is also very important, because you have to respond not only to yourself, but outside of yourself, to this other person. I had a girlfriend who helped me and would call me every day and ask how everything was doing. She was also quitting smoking, but she was trying to do it cold turkey. I am no longer smoking. She still smokes. So that just goes to show that this program really works. And as to getting into moods or getting bad-tempered, whenever I'd have a desire to smoke, I would breathe through it, and I'd say, this too shall pass. And that saying is just wonderful. This too shall pass. And I knew that it would pass in a matter of minutes, not days or hours or days. So a lot of breathing, a lot of flicking fingers, or out walking, enjoying the trees, the plants, the birds, the quantities of birds where I live. So that's a lot of fun.
Appreciating the nature and
yes,
what life has to offer. Yeah.
Yes.
That's great. And I like that you had the support of a friend, and even if people don't have someone they can call or they can ask to check on them, there is the community.
There's Facebook. Exactly. The community of Facebook. I see a lot of people.
Yeah.
Put it out there that they're putting out with the other members that they're going to quit smoking. So that's good too.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah.
Yes.
Jenny, thank you so much for being here and for taking the time to share your experience and your story of how you quit smoking. I think it's amazing how you applied yourself and you committed to the process and you made it work for you. So that's very inspiring. And I know that your advice and what you shared will help and motivate many others who are trying to stop smoking right now. So thank you.
Thank you for having me on this comment, on the ex-smoker comments.
Great. My pleasure. And if you're here watching this video, leave a comment below and let Jenny and I know what you're taking away from her journey that can help you in yours. We're looking forward to reading your comments. Thank you all for being here. Have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time.